gonna go for another reading. I don't know how far we'll get again today. Might just be a chapter, I don't know, we'll see. But we will just go with the flow of how the day goes. All right, picking up on chapter 4 of the Gita, Bhagavad Gita, Paramahamsa Sri Swami Vishwananda's version of the Gita. All right, cool. Chapter 4, Jnana Vibhaga Yoga, the path of knowledge. Chapter 4 begins with Krishna telling Arjuna how he originally taught this ancient knowledge of karma yoga to Vivasan, the sun god. Due to the passage of time, it was lost, and now it is being received once again. It is at this point that Krishna declares emphatically, his identity as the Avatara, the Lord who has descended to protect Dharma and vanquish evil. The discourse then shifts back to a discussion on karma yoga and how we can understand the true nature of action. The overall point is that action which produces results, karma, is not connected with one's external activity, but rather the state of consciousness we are in. Our thoughts, feelings, and desires also produce karmic results. If we are free of desire and detached no matter how much activity we're engaged in, there are no karmic consequences to our actions. However, even if we do our best to abstain from any external activity, so long as we have desires and attachment, we will always be creating further results. In other words, the level of renunciation and the amount of karma produced cannot be simply gauged from one's outside behavior. Following on from this, Krishna discusses the ritual fire sacrifice, or yagna. Traditionally, this yagna is seen as a way of satisfying the gods and fulfilling material desires. But Krishna explains that this yagna should not be understood as just an external act, but an internal process of restraint and dedication. Controlling the senses, breath, and taking up vows are all different forms of yagna. Rather than focusing on the external ritual for material gain, karma yoga is all about the inner yagna, which eventually leads to knowledge of the self, Brahma yagna. Once this goal is achieved, the realization of who we truly are destroys the possibility of incurring any additional karma. Chapter 4 Intro, Key Terms. Dharma. Everything in this world is part of a natural cosmological order. As a result, each individual has a set purpose in line with this order. Dharma is the fulfillment of this purpose. Yagna. This is the Vedic fire sacrifice. Various ritual offerings are made in an effort to appease the different gods and gain results. Throughout the Gita, however, Krishna introduces yagna as being more about the internal sacrifice of spiritual sacrifice, rather than just a fire ritual. So throughout the Gita, however, Krishna introduces yagna as being more about the internal sacrifice of spiritual practice, rather than just a ritual, a fire ritual. Okay, verses 1 through 6, the revival of ancient wisdom. Lord Krishna says, I taught this imperishable yoga to Vivasvan, taught it to Manu declared it to Ikshvaku. Handed down through disciplic succession, the royal sages received this knowledge. But due to the passage of time, Arjuna, this yoga was lost to the world. It is the same ancient yoga which I now teach you. As you are my devotee and my friend, it is indeed the highest mystery. Arjuna says, your birth was recent, and the birth of Vivasan was long ago. How is it possible that you taught this in the beginning? Lord Krishna says, many births of mine have passed, O Arjuna, and so it is with you also. I know them all, but you do not know them. Though I am unborn and unchanging, and although I am the Lord of all beings, by using my own nature, prakriti, I enter into this world by my own free will. Here Krishna is revealing his eternal relationship. He says, this ancient yoga that I am revealing to you, I am giving to you out of the love which I have for you. This is the same yoga which I have given to the sun god billions of years ago, and I am now giving it to you. Nothing has changed. Even if you have forgotten it due to passing from generation to generation and it has disappeared in time, here it is on this battlefield, for you are my devotee and you are my friend. When you are in tune with the divine reveals to you your true dharma of life on earth. Then all the illusion, all the other dharma which you have thought about disappears. Only then you have true knowledge of how to serve the Lord. Only then can the Lord reveal himself to you. Therefore, Arjuna should not entertain any doubt about the truth of the Lord when he says, I gave this knowledge to the sun god. I existed before everything was created or manifested. This secret was only given to people by their gurus when they were ready. If you give this Brahma-jnana, knowledge of the self, to people who are not ready to grasp it with their hearts, they will not know what to do with it. If their minds are too focused on the outside world, it will not make any sense to them. It will be just meaningless. Krishna sees this quality of a bhakta inside of Arjuna, this longing. That's what the guru, the teacher, the master looks for in devotees, in the disciples. He checks to see if the soil is ready, if all the wild grass has been removed, and if the disciples are ready to do their dharma or not. If people are in a state of confusion, if they are given such knowledge and such blessing, they will fall deeper into confusion. But if one who is wholeheartedly surrendered to the Guru, one doesn't need to worry about anything. Everything will be taken care of. Verses 7 through 8, Krishna declares himself as the avatara of the age. Arjuna, wherever there is a decline in dharma, righteousness, and an increase of adharma, unrighteousness, it is then that I manifest myself. For the protection of the good, for the destruction of the wicked, and to establish dharma, I incarnate myself from age to age. Here Bhagavan Krishna is saying that he comes forth from age to age whenever righteousness is covered by unrighteousness, whenever evil starts to predominate in the world, and when it is threatening and destroying cultures and the world. For the good and benefit of this world, Bhagavan manifests himself, and he manifests by his own willpower. People can't understand the ultimate, God himself, the Lord of all creation, the one who is ever pure, who is awakened and ever... Let me try going off the Wi-Fi here. When I will it, I manifest. I'm ever free to take any... This is just in be God. Arjuna, but you will avail. Practices its teachings wholeheartedly with love in their hearts, is free and attains him. But it's not just about saying, I love God. You also have to serve him. You have to have this deep knowledge through meditation that he is the core of the self in each person. You have to train the mind to see him in everybody and in everything. Therefore, no one is waiting to die to attain him, to realize him. No, now in this moment, do everything to see him. Do everything to feel his love. Whether you attain him now or not, don't learn to accept it. It's not only after you leave the body that you will attain God. No, first you attain him now in every moment of your life. True happiness can be given only by the Lord himself. Only when you long for him, he reciprocates the feelings that you have inside of you. Not just one time, but 100 times more. You think that you are thinking of him. No, he is thinking of you. You think that you are going to him. He is running towards you. You think of him. Verses 16 through 23, defining action and inaction. What is action? What is inaction? Even the wise are confused about this. I shall now explain to you what action is. Knowing this, you will be free from suffering. For verily one must understand what is action, karma, what is forbidden action, vikarma, as well as what is inaction, akarma. Action is indeed hard to understand. He who sees in action, and also action in inaction, is wise among people. He is fit for liberation and performs all his designated duties. He whose every action is free from personal gain has his sins burnt up by a sage. A person who has renounced attachment to the fruits of action is dependent on no one and is ever content in the self. He does not act despite being engaged in activity. Free from expectation, with a controlled mind, having no sense of ownership, and acting only to maintain the body, one does not incur sin. When one is content with what transcended the pairs of opposites, is free from envy, and is balanced in success and failure, despite acting, one is not bound. For the liberated person who is free from attachments, whose mind is established in wisdom and acts only for sacrifice, karma is entirely dissolved. Thinking involves performance of action. The mind wandering around is still action. You can't stop that. But you can transcend these worldly activities. You can see that everything is predominated by the Lord. If you perform inaction without the direction and supervision of meditation, you can control your speech, you can control the body. Even if the mind, speech, and body are controlled, if the motive is egotistic, if there is still an expectation, it will not lead you anywhere. The realized ones, the enlightened souls, have the true knowledge. They know which action to perform and which motive to use, so it will lead them to complete renunciation, and not only superficially. So that's why those who are seeking to liberate themselves should surrender to a guru, who will lead them out of this game of action, inaction, and prohibited action. Prohibited action means action done with deceit, hypocrisy, violence, greed, pride. On the other hand, when people do work with devotion, they are humble. When one is surrendered to the guru, automatically one is humble. One is ready to accept what the guru says, which means one has to remove one's own will and ways of seeing and embrace what the guru is giving. Of course, the guru has to have certain qualities, otherwise he can't help you progress. In the world nowadays, there are so many gurus, so many teachers. There are many gurus who will teach yoga. But if these gurus don't teach you to attain the perfection of the soul, and if they just focus on the perfection of the body or the mind, it's not enough. That's why I said it's very important to know the guru who can help you advance and attain the ultimate reality. There are many learned people in the world who know all the scriptures. Their head is full of book knowledge, but this doesn't give them liberation. It doesn't free them. These people fail to determine what their true nature is. That's why it is necessary to approach a true guru and surrender to him. Nowadays, there are many schools of yoga, Each one claims that their yoga is better than the others. But when one is realized, one sees that all ways are right, because God puts people where they have to be. So, if there is true realization, there is no judgment. If one has divine knowledge, one should not have any judgment towards anyone. One should not have any enmity or aggressiveness towards anyone. If people are doing their sadhana, either for their own benefit or to gain something from the world, this can be considered prohibited action, and they won't gain anything from it. Whereas a true guru teaches one to love God beyond everything and surrender to God, then one is free. The wise people perform all their duties in a renounced way. They renounce the fruit of their action and the thinking, I am doing this, quote unquote. If you think that you are doing it, you will expect the result. If you think that you're doing it, you will expect the result. But if the mind is not on I, if the mind is upon him, thinking he is doing it through me, no matter what the result will come, it will be the fruit of that action which the Lord has performed through you. When the Lord performs a certain action through you, there is always perfection in it, and you will always have peace of mind. You will be free from karma because you are not creating the karma. As the Lord is free from karma, so shall you be. Verses 24 through 33, the different types of yagna. For those absorbed in God, Brahman is the instrument, Brahman is the oblation, Brahman is the one who offers into the fire, which is also Brahman. Brahman alone is to be reached by one who meditates upon him in one's actions. Some yogis resort only to sacrificing to the demigods, but others sacrifice into the fire of Brahman and perform sacrifices for its own sake. Some offer hearing and the other senses into the fires of restraint. Others offer sound and the other objects of the senses into the fires of the senses themselves. Others offer the actions of the senses and life breath, prana, into the fire of yoga, which is based on self-control and illuminated by true knowledge. Observing strict vows, some sages offer material objects as sacrifice. Some make offerings through austerity and yoga, while others offer their scriptural study and knowledge as sacrifice. Still, there are others who offer their exaltation into the inhalation. Still, there are some who offer their exhalation into the inhalation, and the inhalation into the exhalation. In this way, they achieve the state where all breathing stops. Others who restrict their eating offer the practice of breath control, pranayama. All these yogis know the meaning of sacrifice, and through their sacrifices become free of sinful reactions. The remnants of sacrifice is the nectar of immortality. By taking it, one attains that eternal abode of the Lord. Understand, Arjuna, that one cannot live happily in this world without sacrifice. And what can be said of the next? In this way, many forms of sacrifice have been laid down in the Vedas. All of them are based on action. Once you understand this, you shall be liberated. The sacrifice of wisdom is superior to the ritual material sacrifice. O Arjuna, all action has its end in wisdom. There is a saying that goes, God is always with the people, whether people want it or not. But people are not always with God. However, someone who is realized has already attained the state of realizing that everything, wherever one goes, whatever one does, is only him. Whatever one is doing, it is him doing it. Every step, every thought, everything. If one doesn't self-judge oneself, one will see that it is only the Lord himself taking every step, doing every action. If the aim is to attain God, it doesn't matter where you are or what you are doing. However, it's very important how you are doing your duty. how you are doing the offering, with what aim, and with what attitude you are doing it. If it is with pride, it doesn't reach him. There's not only one way, but the aim is one. The aim is only God. And if everybody understands this aim, one will be free. It doesn't matter where one is. That's why at the beginning, Lord Krishna himself says to Arjuna that each one has been placed in the right place to do their duty. And if one does one's duty properly with the attitude of surrendering to the divine will free that person. That's why he says, Arjuna, accept your duty and be free. Yagna doesn't only mean when you sit and pour ghee into the fire. Whatever you do is a sacrifice upon the altar of the Lord. It is a continuous offering. That's what Bhagavan is asking for you right now, to sacrifice these material things and to sacrifice the way you see things. Transform. Know that everything is the divine only. Find the divine inside of you. Find the divine in every action you are doing. Release yourself. Let the self take over. Let God take over your life. Let yourself be consumed by the love of God. That's what realization is. When your heart is consumed with the love of God, you will have that awareness. And that's what Atma Kriya Yoga does inside. It elevates you to that realization. Verse 34, the importance of the Guru. One should approach a spiritual master with submission, extensive inquiry, and service. The realized souls can instruct you, for they have seen the truth. Here Bhagavan Krishna himself is saying that if you just take a book and read it, it will not lead you anywhere. Here he is giving you the importance of the master. Surrender to the feet of the master. Serve the master with your heart filled with love and humility. Earn that grace from the master. Make yourself ready. Make yourself willing. Make yourself worthy. Let the master guide you. The master has already reached one with the divine. Often people say, no, you don't need a master in life. You don't need a guru. You're in a jungle without a guide, and you will be lost. Even if something is very near, just like realization is there, one needs a guide. This is the importance of a master. The guru wants the disciples to reach a certain level. They know that they have a certain mission, a certain goal. If they're not doing it, the master has to be strict. The strictness doesn't mean that the master doesn't love the disciple. He does. It's like when an abscess grows on the leg of a child. First, the parents use medicine to cure the child, but if it's not getting cured, the parents will not hesitate to cut the limb of the child to save the child's life. If it's even necessary to cut off the leg of a child, they will do it. How difficult this would be, but the parents care for their children. In the same way, the guru is sometimes strict so that the evildoers, quote unquote, will be destroyed so that you can grow and rise spiritually. When the mind is upset, one doesn't see that the guru is doing everything for the benefit of the disciple's progress, even if he has to sacrifice himself as Christ did. The guru is always sacrificing himself for the sake of his disciples and devotees. Verses 35 through 42. The fruit of karma yoga is realized knowledge. Once you receive this knowledge, Arjuna, you will never be again. Through that knowledge, you will see all beings without exception, and then as part of me. even if you are the most sinful of all sinners, you can cross over this miserable condition by the boat of knowledge. Arjuna, just as a blazing fire turns wood, one who has faith will gain this knowledge. If educated and held this, there is only destruction. The doubting person does not believe. O Arjuna, when one is established in karma yoga, with doubts dispelled by knowledge, having a steady mind, such a person is not bound by action. Therefore, with the sword of knowledge, cut this doubt present in your heart, which has arisen from ignorance. Protected by this yoga, arise and fight, O Arjuna. The truth about the soul is deeply mysterious because it cannot be known by the mind. It is only a few who have controlled the mind, who are centered in the Lord, who are fully dedicated to the spiritual path, who receive the grace of realization. Many people practice meditation, but only a few really attain realization. And who are these few? The ones who are completely surrendered. You have a human body, and in this human body, God has given you the power to find him. This means that he has great hope for you. He has great hope that you can do it. He is waiting for you. If you let yourself be weak, he can't help you. But if you make yourself strong, he will carry you. If you are not ready, the true knowledge doesn't come to you. If you're not ready, the Guru doesn't reveal himself to you. But when you are ready, you are guided to where you have to be, to Mother Nature, and the Guru receives that email. He says, this one is ready. When one has faith, one is ready to evolve, ready to change, and ready to transform. Faith makes you conquer and control the mind and senses. It is through faith that he brings you on the spiritual path to get better and to grow. It is through faith that you can have respect for your teacher. It is through faith that you can accept what the teacher is giving you, and in that faith, humility and peace of mind awaken. Many claim they know better. They come and then they leave due to that pride. They don't want to let go of their pride. They don't want to let go of their ego. They don't want to change. By surrendering to the feet of the Master, all the errors of life are removed. Once you have this knowledge, once you have this right knowledge about the Atma, the truth will be revealed. That supreme revealed not outside, but first inside of yourself. Chapter 4, verses, key terms. Vivasvan, also referred to as the sun god, who was given this knowledge by Krishna at the beginning of the age. Varnas, the different social classes within Vedic. Brahman, in this context, this term is used to describe the supreme reality, God or Narayana. Demigods, term interchanged with devas, which refers to the limited celestial beings who occupy different heavenly realms within the material universe. Although not perfected beings, they are generally associated with both lead to the highest state. But of the two, karma yoga is superior to the renunciation of action. One who neither resents nor desires anything is a true renunciate. Whoever is free from the pairs of opposites is easily liberated from bondage, O Arjuna. Only the inexperienced speak of Jnana Yoga and Karma Yoga as separate. One who is firmly established in either path attains the fruit of both. That state which is attained by the one who sees that both are really one is truly wise. But renunciation is hard to achieve without Karma Yoga. The sage who follows this yoga quickly attains realization. One who is devoted to the path of action, who is pure of mind, who is self-controlled, who has conquered the senses, sees the Supreme Self in all beings. Even while acting, one remains untainted. Arjuna is still examining what Krishna said in the previous chapters about Jnana Yoga, the path of knowledge, and Karma Yoga, the path of action. The Lord says both paths. Krishna considers knowledge superior to action. Why does he also urge him to fight? If knowledge is superior to action, then Krishna should just say, okay, renounce everything, go and sit in the cave. This doubt is still playing in Arjuna's mind, so he's unable to really understand what Krishna is trying to tell him. He continues to look at this from the point of view of the mind, asking Lord Krishna, which one will be better for me? Which path should I adopt to attain the true wisdom, to attain the wisdom of the self? And in his duty without any personal expectation, without any attachment, dedicating all his action to God. Arjuna is sitting there in his chariot on the battlefield, sincerely asking, which path, Lord? Here the Lord says that both yogas will bring you to supreme. For the sake of attaining God, you will attain salvation. But Krishna gives priority to Karma Yoga, saying to Arjuna, you are a Karma Yogi. You are married. You have a family. You have children. You are a warrior. It's not meant for you to go and sit in a cave. It is interesting to note here that Krishna is talking to everybody in this world, saying, find me in whatever you do. I am in your house. The moment you sit and do your sadhana, I am there. I am also in the work that you are doing. Expectation. But when work is done only to serve God, to please him, one beholds the absolute Lord in whatever one does. Then there is a mixture of both yogas, Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga, because the Karma Yogi is acting as a true renunciate. On the other hand, there are many people who pretend to renounce, who appear to renounce, yet they haven't renounced anything. The renunciation that Lord Krishna is referring to is not a superficial renunciation. It means to renounce very deeply and sincerely. It's of no use to say, I have renounced everything. I have renounced the outside world, and then sit there and think, oh, I wish I had this. I wish I had that. When you renounce something, you have to let go of it in the mind itself. There are many people who are still living in the world outside, yet they are true renunciates. They are free. They are not attached to the fruits of their actions. Krishna says that's the best path. It's not because one wears a robe, one becomes a renunciate. One becomes a renunciate when one renounces the expectations, this aggressiveness of the mind, when one has control over the senses, when one perceives the aim of life is only to serve God in everything. This is true renunciation. The true renunciate can be a karma yogi, someone who is doing one's duty in the outside world, yet who is completely surrendered to the divine. Renouncing everything for something will not bring you peace, because there will always be an expectation. And when this expectation is not fulfilled, what will arise? Frustration. And frustration will lead you to anger. Anger will lead you to mental stress. You have incarnated in this world to do certain things, and once you are here, you can't run away. Even a saint who has renounced everything, sitting in the cave, in a hut, is performing action too. Saints are constantly praying for the world, for everyone. This is their duty. Verses 8 through 17. The self is untouched by action. Despite seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, moving, sleeping, and breathing, The one who is engaged in yoga practices and sees the truth, declares within himself, I do nothing. Even while speaking, releasing, grasping, opening, and closing the eyes, he is always aware it is just the senses operating amongst the sense objects, among the sense objects. One who acts without attachment, surrendering one's actions to the Lord, is not tainted by sinful actions, just as a lotus leaf is unaffected by water. Renouncing all attachment to action and using the body, the mind, the intellect, and the senses, the yogis act only to purify themselves. Giving up the fruits of actions, the yogi attains everlasting peace. But the one who is attached to the results of action, impelled by desire, is subject to bondage. Mentally renouncing all actions and being in full control, the embodied self lives happily in the city of 9 gates, i.e., the body, neither acting nor causing the body to act. The master of the body, the self, does not initiate activities, nor does it induce people to act, nor does it create the fruits of actions. It is a person's inherent nature that does all this. The all-pervading Lord does not take on the sin or merit of any person. Knowledge is covered by ignorance, and so beings are deluded. But for some, the ignorance covering the self is destroyed by knowledge. This knowledge acts like the sun and reveals a higher reality. When one strives for the supreme goal, with their mind, faith, and intelligence absorbed fully in it, the knowledge gained free. I'm just going to redo that one, sorry. When one strives for the supreme goal, with their mind, faith, and intelligence fully absorbed in it, the knowledge gained frees them from contamination. They go to the place from which there is no return. Those who are always aware of the ultimate reality remain constantly absorbed in the true identity of God. As their minds are always focused on the divine, they are not attached to pride and say, I am doing this or I am doing that. No, they're always aware that it is the divine who is doing everything through them. And if one is fully focused on the self, focused on God, and serving him, there will be no duality. When duality disappears from the mind, there will be no trace of evil qualities like lust, greed, anger, infatuation, or egoism. All of these negative qualities, these 100 karuvas, will be killed and disappear and vanish. The heart will be purified and the mind will be constantly under control. Even when they walk in the outside world, whatever they do doesn't touch them at all. There is no anger in their hearts and no judgment in their minds, Lord. Here, Lord Krishna uses the example of the lotus leaf. The lotus is born from the muddy water, which is very dirty. But when it rises to the surface of the water doesn't touch it. Have you ever seen lotus leaves? Even if you put the water on them, it quickly falls off. He meant here that you have to be like the lotus leaf, so that nothing can cling to you. When you do your sadhana, only God should be there. If God is your aim, if God becomes everything for you, no negativity will be able to cling to you. Like water can't stay on the lotus leaf and runs off it. If one is completely surrendered to the divine, all the negative qualities, all the kinds of attachments which one has in this world will disappear. Even the attachment to gaining heaven will disappear. On the other hand, every action which is done with expectation, with the aim of self-gratification, or with ego, will bring pain to oneself. And due to the karma created from this, one binds oneself to the cycle of birth and death and will destroy life itself. And the more one is attached to this karma, the more difficult difficult it is to remove it. It's like creating and building up layers of karma. A true karma yogi considers everything as coming from God, belonging to God, and mind and the intellect belong to God. So the karma yogi performs all his duties absolutely unselfishly, with a disinterested spirit. In this way, one is completely purified. In such a and one is totally under the inspiration and guidance of God, living and working as his instrument. Even the small I, which is aware of God, is only him. Krishna says, by mere renunciation of the body, one gets attached to the nine-gated city, the body. But when the mind is fully absorbed in the divine through service, when the mind is tamed and controlled through discrimination and reasoning, it turns automatically within. Then, with the mind turned within, when the mind turns within, the intellect awakens. And through this intellect, through this wisdom, the heart opens up to love. Through that love, one is fully absorbed in the super soul, in God consciousness within one's soul. In this state, it is the soul itself that is perceiving. At first, the mind was looking at the soul, and now the soul is looking at the super soul. Those who are under the control of the indriyas, the sense organs, and the sense enjoyment claim doership. They are not aware of the divine self within themselves due to this ignorance. Here, the Lord says, I am beyond this. All this game of the outside reality is done by Prakriti. Everything which is manifested, which is tangible, is Prakriti. But this doesn't affect him or touch him. He is the great observer. He is the soul of souls who is not touched by anything. Lord Krishna emphasizes that this game, you are not the doer. It is just the human mind that gives you the limited perception that you are the doer. The natural function of the heart is to beat and to pump the blood throughout the body. The natural function of the eyes is to see. The natural role of fire is to burn. The natural role of water is to wet. All of these have been created through Prakriti, only through his will. So Mother Nature carries on her own work. But when one gets realized, one rises above material nature. However, if they realize that one is hanging on to the gunas, how can one be free? If people don't realize their true essence as being part of the Supreme, if they don't see the divinity within themselves, if they get stuck in the duality of like and dislike, good and evil, then they unite themselves with the material nature. Very often people think that God is only good, quote unquote, and doesn't have any imperfections inside of him. But how can he be God if he doesn't have any imperfections? He is the source of everything. He has all the quote unquote good inside him, and he has all the imperfections inside him. And he is also above all these qualities. That's what makes him God, because his own creation. Once the eyes are open, one will perceive that light, not only within oneself, but everywhere, because that light which the divinity carries is not limited. It is not only here in yourself, but it is in everything. When you are fully absorbed into the divine, automatically will shine through you. You will glow. Here the glow is not an external glow, but a glow from the inside out, and that glow reflects upon you. That glow will consume every trace of ignorance in the body, in the mind, everywhere. And that's what will set you free. The first thing that one has to do is perceive Krishna within oneself. When you sit down in your meditation, you are absorbed and seeing the Guru and God within you. So this is where the inner Guru reveals himself. So this wisdom, this awakening will make you luminous and will transform your gloomy self into a luminous self. You will start to shine. You will transform everything around you. The misdeeds, misapprehension, the impure thoughts, everything will be purified. So when everything is glowing with this luminous light, this uncreated light of Krishna within you, then how can there be sin? Once you have attained, stay immersed in that divine bliss, even being in the world itself. Verses 18 through 26, the state of equanimity. The sages perceive with equal vision a good and learned brahmana, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog-eater. Those who have reached this equanimity have risen beyond the conditions of the material world. The self is pure and unchanging, and because such persons are situated in the self, they are the same. One who neither rejoices at gaining what is pleasant, nor grieves at receiving what is unpleasant, whose mind is fixed and undiluted, he has knowledge of the self and he dwells in the self. When the mind is attached from external sensations, one finds happiness in the self. And when through yoga the mind is on the Lord, one enjoys endless bliss. The pleasures that arise from contact with the external world are a source of suffering. They have a beginning and an end, O Arjuna, and so the wise do not rejoice in them. A person who can resist the impulses arising from desire and anger whilst still in the body is a true yogi and a joyful person. One who is joyful within, whose pleasure is within and is illuminated within, is a true yogi. He is liberated within the Supreme and he attains the Supreme. The sages who are free from the pairs of opposites, who are self-controlled, and who are devoted to the welfare of all beings, become cleansed of all impurities and attain the bliss of the Supreme. To those who are free from desire and anger, whose minds are controlled, and who have attained self-mastery, liberation is close at hand. Here, Brahmana doesn't mean a priest or somebody who is born into a certain caste. No, Krishna says here, you are Brahmana when you have realized God, when you have realized your relationship with Him, when you have attained Him. Those who have this true knowledge, who are fully aware that every duty is only service to the Lord. Those who have this true knowledge are fully aware every duty is only service to the Lord. Sages, the sadhus, the saints, perceive only the oneness. They see God equally in each person. They see beyond outward appearances and respect each person's role as being in accordance with the will of God. They have this deep knowledge, which allows them to see that there is perfection everywhere. There is nothing that is imperfect. Imperfection is due to the ignorance in the minds of men. But if one has transcended one's human nature and realized the divine self, and the divine qualities manifest through one, then one sees that the whole creation which has come out of him is a projection of his own will. The one who is ignorant finds faults everywhere and proclaims, I am better than you. What I believe is best. My God is better than your God. Why do you have so many gods? Then, due to ignorance, people fight over all these things. But the truly wise ones who have realized themselves, whose knowledge is not based on mere study of scriptures or on books, who has perceived the truth within themselves, who has perceived the divine, God within their true self, doesn't find fault anywhere. But the truly wise ones who have realized themselves, whose knowledge is not based on mere study of scriptures or books, who have perceived the truth within themselves, who have perceived the divine, God within their true self, don't find fault anywhere. People can give them either honor or dishonor. People can criticize them because of lack of understanding. But to the saint, it doesn't make any difference. For the one who is seated in God consciousness, it doesn't matter if life brings joy or sorrow. His faith is never shaken. One who takes delight in the sense enjoyment of the outside world, whose mind is always running toward judgment and criticizing everything, will never experience this supreme blissful state. The joy born of dispassion, the bliss which the realized soul attains, is far greater than any so-called joy and happiness of the outside reality. People's happiness level always varies, doesn't it? Today they wake up on the right foot, and if they are happy, tomorrow they will wake up with the left foot. And when they are not happy, the ones who are constantly awake in the divine self, who are constantly in the blissful state, always wake up with the right foot, even if the left foot touches the ground first. They are constantly meditating on God, so they perceive only this one reality, Narayana. They eat Narayana, they sleep Narayana, they talk Narayana, they dance Narayana, they laugh Narayana. There's not a single moment when Narayana is not present, for each breath is Narayana. No one is responsible for your happiness or your unhappiness except yourself. You are the cause of your own happiness. When you are surrendered wholeheartedly to God, when your mind, body, and spirit are fully in accordance with the will of God, serving God, meditating on Him, this becomes the source of your true happiness and bliss. But when the mind runs toward the external reality, thinking, yes, this is it, when one is finding great joy in the outside world, this will bring deep sorrow to oneself. The one who enjoys the sense objects automatically becomes evil-minded, have to go through enormous suffering in this life and even later on in future lifetimes. And then one will ask, what have I done to God to suffer so much? Why me and not my neighbor? God is the supreme light of all lights. The whole universe is illuminated by His effulgence. Is illuminated by His effulgence. He is the supreme soul in all beings. A true yogi is ever conscious of such a God. He sees the ultimate as his own self. He remains constantly absorbed in His love, His peace, and His light. Even though the world appears real, the true yogi sees beyond the external reality. He sees beyond what normal people see. He sees the source. He sees within his own self the supreme light, the light of God. Antaratma, Antara Jyoti is the inner light. Antaratma is the supreme light within the core of his soul itself. Then one starts to emanate the inner light and become a source of salvation not only for oneself but for others. Wherever one goes, one brings this light to the people. These ones don't think only for themselves. They say, I have reached that realization. I want every soul to realize themselves. I want everybody to understand how the mind is, and I want everybody to be free. That's what the Guru does. The Gurus have already realized and attained the Supreme Lord, but yet they come down of their own accord to help and to uplift humanity. You have to change. You have to transform. You have a life. You are a living identity. You have to move out of this ignorance and be aware of the knowledge of the self. You have the reflection of the Master upon you. As you come into the light of the Master shines upon you. Reflect your Master. Let the light you have received from your spiritual path enlighten others also. Verses 27 through 29. Introducing yoga practice. Shutting out all external contacts, focusing the gaze between the eyebrows, suspending the inward and outward breaths within the nostrils, and having controlled the senses, mind, and intellect, the sage who desires liberation gives up desire, fear, and anger, and attains it. and knowing me as the supreme enjoyer of all sacrifices and austerities, as the Lord of all the worlds and the friend of every being, one attains peace. Usually the human mind hangs on to the outside reality, but when the mind is tamed and starts to look within, then the focus of the mind is towards the true knowledge of the soul. When you sit in meditation, the mind starts to perceive everything in a different way. The mind looks up to the soul, to the great observer, and when the soul is turned into itself, it rests in the greater supersoul, who is Narayana. When the soul rests in the supersoul, it still continues its activities in the world, but it is the supersoul who is doing this activity. At this point, one is fully absorbed into the supersoul. One is fully absorbed into this awareness that God alone is the reality, nothing else. He says, I am your friend. He says, I am your best friend. I am the friend of every being. Those who attain that peace, those who attain that level of consciousness, they realize that whatever I am doing, it is not for my sake. Whatever I am doing is for your sake and for the sake of uplifting humanity. That is the humbleness of God. He lowers himself so that you can be dear to him. All right, we'll move on to chapter 6. Another day. Jai Gurudev. Adios from Mexico. Adios from Mexico.